Detroit Lions cornerback Emmanuel Moseley is out indefinitely with a torn pectoral. A player signing with the Detroit Lions last offseason to come in and potentially be the cornerback one of this defense has now suffered a potential season ending injury for the second year in a row. Emmanuel Moseley signed to the Detroit Lions in 2023 for a 1 year, $6 million contract, a contract that was supposed to be one that helped him be the number one starting cornerback on the boundary alongside Cam Sutton to form a brand new duo. However, that unfortunately did not happen. Emmanuel Moseley was recovering from a torn ACL, and unfortunately, just 4 snaps after coming back, suffered another torn ACL in the opposite knee. Now, Emmanuel Moseley is a very good cornerback in the NFL, standing at 5'11, 195 pounds. The 2018 undrafted free agent has played really, really well throughout his career with 33 starts, 162 tackles, 33 passes defended, 4 interceptions, and 1 touchdown. Now, on top of that, in his last 16 healthy games, Emmanuel Moseley was targeted 82 times, allowed 49 receptions for a 59% completion percentage, 478 yards through the air with 0 touchdowns allowed and 2 takeaways to his name. Despite being undrafted, despite taking a little bit of a while to get on the field with the 49ers defense, once he finally did and once he saw that opportunity, he was one of the best cornerbacks on the 49ers franchise and was a big part of their help of getting him to the Super Bowl, was a big part of their NFC championship runs, and he was a major contributor to the defense of the 49ers that over the last half decade has been one of the best in the NFL. However, the big knock on Emmanuel Moseley is, of course, the injury concerns. In 2021, Emmanuel Moseley played just 11 games, and in 2022, he played just 5 games. After tearing his ACL in week 5 of the 2022 season, he spent the entire rest of the year and the entire offseason recovering from that injury. And a full year later, in week 5 of the 2023 season, as the Detroit Lions kicked off versus the Carolina Panthers, Emmanuel Moseley finally made his return to football. But unfortunately, the return wasn't as glorious as he wanted, as just 4 snaps into the game in week 5 of 2023, Emmanuel Moseley would tear his other ACL. Just 4 snaps into the 2023 season, not being targeted a single time, Emmanuel Moseley's season was done yet again. And he spent the rest of that season recovering. He was, a bench player. He was on the PUP list. He was on injury reserves. He was getting healthy, but the Detroit Lions still really liked him. Brad Holmes still wanted to keep the physical press man cornerback around, so they re-signed him again to a 2024 1-year contract to see if Emmanuel Moseley could be healthy and impact this defense. And from the early stages of the offseason, it seemed like a really good contract. Emmanuel Moseley throughout OTAs and minicamps was the starting nickel cornerback. He was starting as the slot cornerback, and he was playing really, really good football. He was physical. He was playing a press man style of physical football that the Lions didn't have last year, right? Cam Sutton didn't have the ability to be a physical press man cornerback. Jerry Jacobs and Kendall Vilder, despite doing their best with the situations, weren't built to be physical press man corners, and that's what Emmanuel Moseley was bringing to the role. He was playing in the slot. He was being physical. He was creating contact. He was redirecting wide receivers, and he was playing really, really well, taking a majority of the first team slot cornerback reps. It seemed like that was the place that Emmanuel Moseley was going to be in 2024. And with Brian Branch taking more snaps at safety, that was the idea of how to get Emmanuel Moseley on the field. However, it came out this morning that Emmanuel Moseley had officially torn his pectoral in yesterday's practice. Now, this is a very common injury among offensive and defensive linemen, and the recovery process typically takes between 10 to 12 weeks, so about 3 to 4 months. And that means that Emmanuel Moseley potentially will return to the Detroit Lions this season. I've seen people saying that, a season-ending injury is on the horizon, and, after Emmanuel Moseley goes down, that's 3 Detroit Lions that throughout training camp have lost their 2024 seasons, right? You have, of course, John Kaminsky, who I believe tore his MCL and will not return to the Detroit Lions until likely next year. Michael Badgley, I believe, tore his Achilles throughout training camp and is again done for the season. But Emmanuel Moseley's torn pectoral, despite being not a good injury, of course, is not an injury that is going to necessarily be the end of his 2024 campaign. If you remember correctly, the Detroit Lions safety from last year, CJ Gardner-Johnson, had a very similar injury at the end of week 2 going into week 3, and he returned by week 15 of the 2023 season. So while it is a majority of the year, about a month into the season to about the last month of the season, Emmanuel Moseley still has over a month, still has 5 weeks until the NFL season even kicks off, meaning we could see Emmanuel Moseley return by December, by potentially January, which again is missing a lot of the season, but that means he could come back and be healthy for the playoffs, be healthy for a playoff push, and potentially be available down the stretch by weeks 10, 11, and 12 as we get into December, late November potentially. And all that, of course, is a little bit of an optimistic look at it, even as a pessimistic look, right? Even going off of the recovery of CJ Gardner-Johnson a season ago, Emmanuel Moseley could potentially be good to go as early as week 10 or 11. And that would be massive for the Detroit Lions to get back that physical presence on the defensive side of the ball and give Emmanuel Moseley his true opportunity to return to the field. Now, with Emmanuel Moseley being out for a majority of the season at this point, what does that leave the Detroit Lions with? Who is going to play slot cornerback for them? Who has been playing slot cornerback for them? And who is the best option to take over that role? Well, as of right now, there are really 3 options. You have Amik Robertson, the free agent acquisition, who's been playing really well throughout training camp and has a lot of eyes on him by the coaching staff and the media. You have Ennis Rakestraw, the preseason and training camp standout player, the second-round selection from Missouri, who so far throughout training camp has been arguably the Detroit Lions' best defensive back while taking second-team reps at the nickel cornerback position. And then you have Ifeatu Melifonwu, the standout player from a season ago who didn't start the season as a starter, but ended on a historically good pace for a safety with multiple sacks, interceptions, passes defended, and a game-sealing interception to win the Detroit Lions the division for the first time in 30 years. Now, while all of these players can and have played in the slot before, there's really going to be a lot of competition for this opportunity, and I don't necessarily think the Lions can go wrong with any of them. Robertson and Melifonwu have both played first-team nickel with the Detroit Lions as early as this offseason. Well, Ennis Rakestraw has played it as early as his freshman season at Missouri, but played a majority of boundary cornerback through the rest of his campaign there, and of course plays mostly boundary cornerback as a cornerback with the second-team defense in Detroit, but he has played slot cornerback as well. So while Robertson and Melifonwu have a little bit more experience as of recently with the first-team defense, that doesn't mean that Ennis Rakestraw can't take that opportunity. Ennis Rakestraw, as I said, is playing as one of the best defensive backs in the Detroit Lions franchise right now with multiple interceptions and multiple turnovers throughout the training camp process. And he is a very similar cornerback to Emmanuel Moseley. From a size perspective, he is very similar from height and weight perspective. From a play style, that tough, physical cornerback that will put hands on you, that will redirect you, that is not afraid to hit and not afraid to tackle. And I do think that Ennis Rakestraw is the most likely player, I guess most similar player to Emmanuel Moseley from a play style aspect, which could give him a massive boost, pumping him up to the first team. Now, today, I think we will get a really good look of how the Detroit Lions look to handle this as they go into their second joint practice with the New York Giants. I think we're going to see exactly how the Lions plan to attack it. Last week, or I guess yesterday, it seemed like Ifeatu Melifonwu was the one that was going to primarily take that role, right? Playing a third safety / slot cornerback in a very similar role to what Brian Branch did a season ago. So I think that is how the Detroit Lions are going to attack it. But even looking at this defense and secondary now, you know that Davis and Arnold are going to be the outside corners. You know that Joseph and Branch are going to be the starting safeties. So no matter if you have Rakestraw, Robertson, or Melifonwu on the field, you're still having a significant upgrade from the secondary a season ago. And the depth on this roster is still really, really good, right? Ennis Rakestraw is a backup boundary cornerback and a backup slot cornerback that I think could feel comfortable playing at either position with the starters. Amik Robertson has experience on the boundary and experience in the slot. And again, if Davis or Arnold goes down, I still feel comfortable putting Robinson in that spot, in that situation to succeed. And then, of course, Melifonwu started his career in Detroit as a boundary cornerback, now playing slot for the Detroit Lions, as well as playing safety from a season ago. The secondary is incredibly deep. So despite losing Emmanuel Moseley and that being quite a large blow to the secondary and to the defense, I think the Detroit Lions this year do have the depth to make up for it. And I do think the defense will be okay. So with that being said, Emmanuel Moseley is unfortunately out for a majority of the season. We will not see Emmanuel Moseley until likely week 12 at the earliest, but his season is not over. His season is not done, and we will potentially see number 4 return to the field for a playoff push. But with all of that being said, that is kind of the update on Emmanuel Moseley. A sad story to open the morning, but some important news for the Detroit Lions defense. Let me know down in the comments below what you think about the injury, what you think is going to happen, who you think will replace Emmanuel Moseley as the starting nickel cornerback for the Detroit Lions. I'd be very curious what you guys have to say and what you guys think. But with all of that being said, that's all I got for you guys right now. Thank you all so very much for watching. If you have yet to subscribe to the channel, please go down below and do so. Helps the channel out a ton. And if you hit the bell notifications, you will never miss a daily Detroit Lions upload. But with all that being said, that's all I got for you guys right now. Thank you all so much for watching. And until next time, and as always, go Lions.